You are welcome to our online CISA lecture series. Having discussed the meaning of IS audit in the previous lecture, now let's move on to the organization of IS audit function. The IS audit function should be established in the Audit Charter. But what is Audit Charter? Audit Charter is an engagement letter, which is an overarching document that covers the entire scope of audit on a particular exercise that is sought to be initiated in an organization with specific objective in mind. Note, there are two things that should be noted in this definition. The audit charter is supposed to be initiated in an organization, and there should be a specific objective in mind. That reminds me of the other day when someone approached us to come and audit a traffic. And for the benefit of some of our listeners who are not so conversant with IT term, a traffic simply means an amount of activity over a communication system. So we need to ask the auditee, what's the aim of the audit? Is it to audit the source of the traffic, or the volume of the traffic, or to detect a rogue traffic? So which means if there is no audit objective, the audit exercise will not be carried out effectively. Having said that, audit charter establish or describe the role of IS audit, and it should also clearly state the management responsibility and objective. It also states the delegation of authority to the IS audit function, and it should also outline the overall authority, scope, and responsibility of audit IS function. And it should be noted that this charter should be approved by the highest level of management or audit committee if it exists in an organization. It should also be noted that the IS audit function can be part of internal audits. It can function as an independent group, or it can be integrated into financial or operational audit. For example, in a financial audit, the role of financial auditor may be to check the transaction posted in the general ledger, whether they are correctly posted or not. Why the role of IS auditor in that financial audit may be to make sure that editing features are in place to detect error in the transaction coding that may affect the posting of the transaction. You can see that the two roles are interrelated, but they are not doing the same thing. Why the financial audit may be to check the correctness of the posting in the GL, but that of IS auditor is to check the code that affects the transaction. So, having said that, there are some of the things to look out for in the audit charter, like scope of audit, the management responsibility of the audit function, objective and delegation of authority. So these are some of the key things to look out for in the audit charter. Now let's move on to audit planning. In some texts, you can see annual audit planning, but they are used interchangeably. It consists of both short-term and long-term. The short-term planning takes into account audit issues that might be covered during the year. That means it's less than a year planning. While the long-term planning relates to audit plans that will affect the future of an organization. That means expand more than a year. It relates to more than a year audit plan. And both plans should be reviewed at least once in a year. So audit planning should be reviewed once in a year. And there are some of the things to consider in an audit planning, like risk assessment, the new control of the organization, the local or international regulatory requirements, corporate deadline, changing business processes, future or changing technologies. So all those things should be considered when about to plan an audit. Aside from the annual audit planning, there is also individual audit planning. That means the auditor involved, the IS auditor involved, must also plan adequately in addition to the audit planning. That means it must understand the overall business environment under review, and this can take the form of acquisition of business knowledge, that is business knowledge of the organization, annual reports, industry publication, or checking their website. It can take the form of review of short and long-term plan, meeting of key managers, review of previous audit reports, touring of key organization facilities, or reviewing of technology used in that organization. Having said that, there are also some steps to perform an audit plan. There are some steps to take in performing an audit plan. One, gain an independent, in-depth understanding of business and its mission statement, business objective, purpose, and processes. That means an IS auditor must gain an in-depth understanding of the business organization before you can set out to plan for the audit. Then risk assessment, that's the evaluation of risk and performance of impact analysis in that of that organization. Then conduct of an internal control review, performance of risk analysis to help in designing the audit plan, addressing the engagement logistic, setting the audit scope and objective, review prior paper work. So these are the steps to take when about to perform an audit plan. Also, we should not forget the effect of law and regulation in audit planning, such as federal law regarding the business, state and local government laws, if applicable, industry-specific law, like banking industry. They have BOFIA or BOFID that guides them, CAMA. So all those industry-related law should be, or regulation should be considered as well. The international law, where applicable, like such as Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, which requires an organization to select and implement a suitable internal control framework. Also, we have COSO, that's Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Tradeway Commission. That framework also talk about internal control. Also, we have Basel Accord 1 to 3, which regulate the amount of capital and financial organization based on the level of risk they face. So, if the company is a multinational company, these are some of the international laws that will be considered. Therefore, an IS auditor have to consider the impact of all this law as part of audit planning. Then, what are the resources to consider or needed when planning for an audit? You know, the IS technology is constantly changing, and it is important for an IS auditor to maintain the competency by updating of existing skill and obtain training directed toward new audit techniques and technological areas. So, it is important to update one's skills and knowledge, because it is not appropriate for an IS auditor to ask the auditee for help during the audit process just because the IS auditor lack skill. So it will affect the objectivity and independence of the audit, and this should be avoided. Therefore, it is necessary for an IT resource person to be deployed for an audit assignment. So, aside all this, we should now know that the summary of all this is that to start an audit planning, 3 things must be considered: the audit charter, which should clearly specify the role and authority of the auditor. Second, the project plan for the audit and availability of proper skill. Having said that, there are some challenges that are faced by auditor, like matching the available resources with the audit plan. So these are what concern about the organization of IS audit function. In the next lecture, we shall discuss more about the IS audit function. Thank you.